Shalom and welcome to the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. We're looking today at a real short verse, Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 16. In the previous verses, the Lord had been announcing that he is bringing the Babylonian nation, a distant nation whose language the people of Israel do not know. He's bringing the Babylonians against them to judge them. And here he's going to add a little bit to it. Pretty simple verse. Let's go ahead and read it in Hebrew as we get started. Ashpato kekever patuach, kulam giborim. Okay. Though it does raise an interesting interpretive question in trying to understand it. So what do we have here? We have ashpato. Well, this is a noun. It's a feminine noun. It has a suffix on it. We can see that right there. So this is a suffix. This is a 3ms suffix. And the noun is actually ash. It's an aleph. Pa. So it would normally have a pathic comments hey on the end of it, and of course turns into a tau in order to add the suffix to it. So, but what does this word mean? Well, ashpat is a word which means quiver. You know, where one would keep arrows. So literally, what we have is his quiver. Now his. Referring to each one of the Babylonian soldiers. So even though we're using it as a singular here with this suffix, you're going to see that most translations will translate it as a plural. Their quivers, because it's referring to each of the Babylonian soldiers. But the text actually says his quiver. We have to supply a verb is or will be, and then like. That's a little preposition making a comparison. Like kever, and kever is a noun which means grave or sepulcher. So is like a grave, patuach, and patuach here is a participle. It's a participle. It's a masculine singular participle, but it's a passive. It's cal. It's passive. You see this shurek right here in the middle. That's a good sign that what we have here is a passive cal participle. So patuach and patak means open. So in the passive it would mean opened. Is like an opened sepulcher. So an opened grave, which is obviously a place where death would be found. The grave has been opened. And then over here, kulam, this is just our regular word kol, but with a suffix on it, in this case a 3mp suffix, so it'd be all of them with the suffix giborim, and gibor, you probably know that word, which simply means a strong man or a warrior, and this is plural of that, masculine plural. So all of them, once again we have to supply a verb, all of them are strong men, or all of them are warriors, talking about those who are coming. So it's plural down here, we have a singular reference up here, but you'll see most of our translations will go in a plural sense. So pretty straightforward. Now what do we mean by their quiver is like an open sepulcher, an open grave? That's the tricky part of this translation. In what sense is that true? Is it because there is death that is found in an open grave, and their quiver, death is found in the quiver? Well, in what sense? Is it referring to the destruction or the deadly arrows that the quiver is containing these arrows, which are going to bring death? So interpreters have wrestled with this a little bit, trying to figure out exactly in what sense his quiver can be compared to an open grave. But obviously the concept of death and destruction is what's going to be coming out. We'll see that in the translations. Let's look at a couple translations now as we work through this. NIV, first of all, would have their quivers. So once again, you can see they've made this into a plural idea, but that's given the context, that's not bad. Their quivers are like an open grave. Straightforward. All of them are mighty warriors. There's not too much different you can do with that. The Tanakh, Jewish Publication Society, I think it's 1985, their quivers are like a yawning grave. Their quivers with the arrows in them are going to take you into this yawning grave. Okay, maybe that's the concept. And again, the imagery is very similar to the first one. They are almighty men. No problem there. And then the Net Bible, much more of a paraphrase with this, and they flip the two lines around. All of its soldiers are strong and mighty, so that's the second line here. And that kind of sets it up to be able to better understand the first line, at least in the thinking of those who worked on the Net Bible. They're arrows, so his quiver, they're obviously taking that by metonymy for the arrows themselves, which are in the quiver, will send you to your grave. Now, all of this is paraphrase here, pretty much, but it probably does express the idea of what's going on. The Babylonians are going to come. They are going to bring God's judgment against God's people. And the Lord is going to develop that even more in the following verses. And yet, as devastating as this imagery is getting, there still is hope that God will preserve his people, or at least a remnant of his people, with judgment. And there's always mercy that God brings to his people as well. So check back with us soon as we continue working through Jeremiah 5 in the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Shalom.